The visitor log at the morgue showed a signature from a man named Alvarez at 2:47 in the morning, 40 minutes after I had zipped him into drawer 12 myself. I have worked graveyard shift in that basement for 6 years, and that was the last night I ever trusted my own handwriting. Before that night, the job was simple. 12 hours, mostly alone, one hallway of steel drawers and a logbook by the door that families sign when they come to identify someone. I did intake paperwork, kept the temperature logs, drank bad coffee, and listened to the building settle. The only person with badge access after midnight was me. That mattered later. Alvarez came in around 2 that morning, an elderly man, DOA from the ER upstairs. Nothing unusual about the transfer. I checked his ID, matched it to the paperwork, wrote his name in the intake log in my own hand, and slid him into drawer 12. I remember the drawer clicking shut, that small metal sound you stop noticing after enough years. I did my rounds. Checked the other drawers, checked the thermostat, sat back down at the desk. It was quiet the way that basement is always quiet, which is to say completely. Around 3:30 I heard the latch on 12. Not a bang, just a soft click, like someone testing it from the inside. I told myself it was the compressor cycling. Drawers settle when the seals adjust. I have said that sentence to myself more times than I want to admit. What I could not explain was the logbook. When I checked it before my next round, there was a new line under my own entry. A visitor signature, time-stamped 2:47 a.m. The name written was Alvarez. Not a nurse, not a family member signing for him, his own name, and when I held it up next to the sample signature on his driver's license, the two matched stroke for stroke. Nobody had buzzed in. The badge reader only showed my entry that whole shift. I told my supervisor the next morning. She looked at the page for a long moment, then said clerical mix-ups happen more than people think, someone probably grabbed the wrong pen, wrong log, and left it at that. I wanted to believe her. For about 2 weeks I did. Then it happened again. Different name, different drawer, same pattern. A signature appearing sometime after intake, always the deceased's own name, always matching their ID sample when I checked. I started timing my rounds tighter, sitting closer to the log so I would catch it happening. I never once saw a hand write those words. I only ever found them already there, ink still wet enough to smear if I touched it. One of the other night guards, a man named Petrosian who covered weekends, quit without notice after a Saturday shift. He didn't call in, didn't turn in his badge, just never came back. I heard secondhand that he told the day's supervisor he'd watched something on the hallway monitor that he wasn't going to describe twice. I never got the chance to ask him myself. After that I stopped waiting for the sound. I started checking the log every 15 minutes, whether or not I had heard anything. For a while that seemed to work. The signatures still came, but at least I understood the entries existed before I saw them, which felt, at the time, like control. Then one night I opened the log to record an ordinary transfer and found a fresh page already turned to, already dated for that shift, with a signature at the bottom in wet ink. No name filled in next to it yet, just the blank line where a name goes, and the handwriting under it unmistakably mine. My shift had 4 hours left to go. I still don't know whose name is supposed to go on that line, or what happens once it does. I keep the logbook closed now unless I absolutely have to open it, and some nights, when I do, the pen is already lying across the page like someone just set it down. On the security monitor, I watched a man standing at my counter 4 full seconds before the bell over the door rang and his truck ever rolled into the lot outside. I have that clip saved on 3 separate hard drives now, because I stopped trusting the version that plays back on the store computer. I worked the overnight shift alone at a gas station off the interstate, the kind of place that gets truckers and nobody else between midnight and 5. 2 cameras covered the store, one on the lot, one over the register, both feeding the same monitor by the cigarettes. It was a boring job most nights, which is exactly what I wanted from it. A regular came in most nights around 1 a.m., a heavy-set man named Doyle who always bought the same thing, black coffee and a pack of the cheapest cigarettes we carried, always paid cash. I noticed him the way you notice any regular, a face that becomes part of the shift's rhythm. The first time I caught the discrepancy, I wasn't even looking for it. I was reviewing old footage to settle a dispute about a stolen case of beer, scrubbing through timestamps, and there he was on the register camera, standing at the counter, at 1 hour 2 minutes and 47 seconds, while the lot camera in the same frame showed his truck still turning in off the highway at 1 hour 2 minutes and 51 seconds. 4 seconds apart. Same clock, synced to the same server. I told myself the cameras had drifted out of sync and left it there. I checked it again a few nights later, more carefully this time, timestamps written down on a receipt. The gap was still 4 seconds, every single night, like a rule instead of a glitch. I started timing his visits on my phone, and along the way I noticed something smaller and worse. The bills he paid with had the same serial numbers each time. Not similar. Identical, digit for digit, going back over a week of receipts I'd photographed out of nothing but boredom. I wanted an explanation that wasn't insane, so one night I just asked him, made small talk, asked if he came through here a lot. He said something I still turn over in my head, something like, "I've been coming in before you noticed me for a while now." He said it flatly, the way you'd mention the weather, and then paid with the same bills and left. The next day I dug through the store's old employee logs, curious whether Doyle had come up before. I found a note left by the clerk before me, just a few lines in a shift log nobody bothers to read, saying she was quitting and didn't want to explain why, except to mention the customer who's early, and nothing else. She never came back for her last paycheck. After that I started watching the monitor obsessively every time the bell rang, checking the screen before I ever looked at the door itself, trying to catch the moment the 2 feeds disagreed. Most nights I saw nothing. A few nights I thought I saw him already standing there a half second before the bell, gone by the time I blinked, and I told myself it was the fluorescent lights doing something to my eyes this late in a shift. Last night the bell rang at 1 a.m. exactly, and out of habit I looked up at the monitor first, the way I always do now. On the screen, behind the counter, on the wrong side of it, I was already standing there looking back out at the register camera, 1 frame ahead of where I actually was. I hadn't moved yet. When I finally turned toward the door myself, no one was there at all, and the bell kept ringing on its own for another 3 seconds before it stopped. I still worked that shift. I haven't seen Doyle again since that night, but some nights near 1 in the morning, I catch myself already standing somewhere I haven't walked to yet, and I've stopped checking the monitor to find out how far ahead of me it's gotten. The pickup address on the incident ping was 1 digit off from my own home address, and for 2 weeks straight, every single night, that 1 digit ticked closer to matching it exactly. Tonight it matched completely, and the dispatch system showed the ride already 10 minutes underway before I ever saw the request come in. I worked overnight support for a rideshare company, the shift where you monitor flagged trips, safety pings, and driver check-ins from a desk with 3 monitors and a headset, mostly quiet except for the occasional accident report or a rider who needed a welfare check. It paid well for something that mostly involved watching a map. The anomaly started small enough that I almost didn't log it. A trip flagged for an unusual route, pickup address ending in 4127, one digit different from my own apartment's address, which ends in 4128. Coincidences happen constantly in a city with that many addresses, so I noted it and moved on, same as I'd been trained to do with anything that didn't look like an actual emergency. 2 nights later, another flagged trip, same street, address ending one digit off from mine again, still close enough to make me look twice before I dismissed it. I mentioned it to a coworker on the same shift, mostly as something odd to talk about during a slow stretch, and she said she'd been seeing something similar on her own queue, pickups that didn't match any driver's accepted request, phantom trips nobody remembered starting. I started keeping a private note of every address that came anywhere close to mine, mostly out of the kind of curiosity you indulge at 3 in the morning when there's nothing else to do. Over the following nights the pattern held in a way that stopped feeling like coincidence. Each flagged trip's address was one digit nearer to my own than the night before, like something dialing in a combination, one click at a time. Around the same time, I started getting welfare check calls routed to me that described details too specific to shrug off. A rider called in distress, and when I asked her to describe her surroundings for the safety log, she described, almost word for word, the sweater I was wearing that night and the mug on my desk. I told myself operators cross paths with all kinds of strange callers and that pattern matching my own life onto a stranger's words was just tired brain nonsense at the end of a long shift. I brought the address log to my supervisor, printed out, timestamp circled. She looked at it for a while, said the system sometimes glitches on geocoding and matches partial addresses, and suggested I take an extra day off if the job was getting to me. I took the day off. The addresses kept climbing closer anyway, log or no log, whether or not I was the one watching. Last night, the trip pinged in at the start of my shift with the pickup address matching my own apartment down to the last digit. I sat there for a full minute just looking at it before I did anything. When I finally opened the trip detail to check the driver assignment, the system showed the ride as already 10 minutes in progress, drop-off destination listed as my employer's office address, the same building I was sitting in right at that moment. I called the number listed for the rider to confirm the trip, more out of reflex than any plan for what I'd say. It rang twice, then connected, and on the other end I could hear, faintly, the exact sound of my own headset feed looping back a half second behind itself, like an echo with nowhere to go. I hung up. Before I could log the trip as an error, a new call lit up on my panel, incoming, extension number matching my own desk line exactly, ringing from inside a building where I was the only person on that floor. I still haven't answered it. It's still ringing, on and off, every night I've worked since, and each time the caller ID shows my own extension, I let it go one ring longer than the last before I finally pick up.